Hey, this is Tanaka Randi Chinombu representing Golden Cloud Network, and today we're going to be talking about a battle that has been active in this country for the past 5-7 years, and it is active right now as we speak, and we'll see how long it will progress. We'll see if it will last until the end of the decade. This battle is between the formal businesses in the country and the informal businesses in the country. We're calling it a battle, but it is frankly competition. Formal businesses are competing with informal businesses. You're seeing people who are taking it upon themselves to provide for themselves because no one is coming to employ them. There's unemployment in the country, and people have stopped waiting for someone to come and save them. People have taken it upon themselves to go in the streets and penetrate the market, infiltrate the market, and start to supply the same things that are being supplied by formal businesses. Once upon a time, you'd know that, hey, if you want shoes, you go to this company. If you want computers, you go to this company. But these days, everyone is selling everything. So it is making it hard for these formal businesses to thrive because they are competing with thousands of other people who are selling the same product. And these people don't have anything to lose. These people do not have some of the regulations that are pressing these formal businesses because, mind you, these formal businesses have to comply with certain regulations. They have to pay their taxes. They have to pay for operating and practicing certificates. They have to comply to bank rates and all these banking conditions that are enforced upon them. Whereas on the other hand, these informal people, they don't even have bank accounts. They're using cash. They're using cash. So at the end of the day, they will outcompete the formal businesses because the formal businesses have a lot of expensive, they have certain liabilities that are pulling them back. But the formal businesses, on the other hand, they have an advantage. They have an advantage of formality. Some companies do not recognize informal business. They don't even want to see them, So they'll prefer to spend more money in these. They'll prefer to spend more money with formal businesses because of the standards that they have set upon themselves. So they're not out. They're still active. They're still operating, and they have a community of people who they work with. But if we're looking at the market as a whole, if we're looking at the majority of the population is not formal. The majority of the population is informal. And the informal people are going to the informal businesses, right? And the formal people are going to the formal businesses. But the formal population is smaller than the informal population. That means that the formal businesses need people from the informal sector or from the informal world. They need their money, So this kind of causes a dilemma where the formal businesses are operating and they're doing okay, but they're struggling to stay afloat in this economy because not much money is circulating in their world. Because there are two worlds now. It's a battle. The country is divided into two. There are two worlds. And a lot of money is on the other side, in the informal sector, where people usually trade using cash. That's the advantage of the informal sector. People operate mainly using cash. And it's not something it's not a flex. It's not something that they strategically designed. These people are people who are just trying to make a living. They cannot afford to buy fiscal devices that will allow them to print invoices and do all these other sorts of things that are done by the formal sector. These are people that are just trying to make $1 or $2. I'm not saying they make $1 or $2. You'd be surprised. They're making money. But the point is, they're not limited. They don't have these restrictions that are hovering over formal businesses. And it's unfair at the end of the day that certain standards, there's like double standards. The formal business and the informal businesses, there are double standards that are applied to these two groups of people. And it's working well for the informal people, and it's kind of dragging people in the informal sector because, mind you, they have to pay these banking charges. They're transacting using banks, right? And they have their bank charges, for every transaction. And every month the bank is deducting money. And then they have Zimra, coming to the offices, knocking on their doors on a daily basis. So it gets hard for them. And these people don't even have access to the entire market in the country. because there's this world, and this world, so from our analysis of the matter, we've noticed that the informal people, they money is circulating in that world. Like, there's a lot of money that's circulating, and these people get enough money for themselves. It's like a free market where everyone gets something. Everyone gets something. Whereas in the formal market, like, it sort of becomes like a monopoly where only a few companies are getting all of the money. So it becomes unfair for other businesses, new companies, new businesses that are trying to penetrate the market, or even other businesses who don't have access to the contracts, who are not being given access to contracts, So it becomes sort of like a dilemma. But this is something that is going on in the country. It has become a battle. So people in the formal businesses, they're we talk to them, and they would actually prefer being involved in formal activities. They'd actually prefer being employed at an industry, because let's face it, being formally employed comes with a lot of benefits. You get leave, you don't work on public holidays, you get your salary at the end of the month. There's a lot of security, there's a lot of comfort, there's a lot of certainty in the formal business world, right? So people in the formal sector actually would like to be in the formal business world, but they can't, because no one is employing them, because there are not enough companies open, there are not enough industries open to employ them. So it becomes hard for them, but they actually want that. And on the other hand, people in the formal world, they're good, relatively speaking, they're good, but they're at the mercy, because the formal people in the formal business world, they're independent. Like, they can form their own systems, that systems that work for them. Okay, I make my money during this time. I make my money at these locations. I make my money here. Like, they can customize their way of working, right? Whereas on the other hand, by being able to customize the way that you work, you'll be able to maximize you'll be able to become more efficient at your work. But on the other hand, people who are in the formal business, they're kind of like cornered. They're cornered in a way of doing things, and sometimes that way may not even be working for them, but because it's a grand system that was established a long time ago, and it's sort of like strict, and it's sort of like uniform, so they have to follow these procedures, they have to follow these systems and procedures, even though sometimes they may not be efficient, based on what's going on in the market in the present moment. So being in the formal sector, you have to make sure, you don't have control over who you're going to be working for, but it will depend on your leadership. If you have great leadership, then you will have, it's not about having a good time, but you'll become more efficient. You'll be able to do more with your time and energy. Your time and energy won't be wasted, because you hear cases where people are not getting paid enough, but they have to be there and they are working hard, and they're exhausted, they can't even do other things, so it depends with the leadership that is present in the informal sector. So it's kind of like a push and pull between both industries. Like, the formal sector have things that people in the informal sector want, and the people in the informal sector have things that the people in the formal sector want, and vice versa, right? So it's kind of like a push and pull. And in terms of the money, right now, more money is circulating in the formal sector because there's free trade, and the suppliers just want their products to move. And as of right now, we're talking about things such as food and beverages. People are preferring the informal market because there's high demand and there's high cash flow. So people are going to be going to the informal market. So right now, as we speak, more money is circulating in the street. But if you're someone who's trying to make it big, you might not do that in the formal sector because the money is kind of like distributed equally. It's like an independent system, that is not governed by any board of people. And you see that in such an arrangement, everyone gets their piece, everyone gets their piece. Of course, there are tough days, but everyone gets their piece. But in the formal sector, you have groups of, you have boards of people who are managing and overseeing all activities, and you see that in such a situation it becomes like bias, where money is going to a small group of people, where the people are doing most of the work. They're not getting enough money. They might even get as much money as someone in the informal world. So it's an interesting dilemma. It's an interesting situation that is going on in the formal and informal sector. So it's more like a battle, right? But to be frank, it's just competition. So this is our analysis for the informal and formal sector. So I guess the question is, what works best for you? Who is making the most money? Who has the best leadership? So those are the type of questions that you be left to ask yourself. But this concludes the end of our presentation. I hope that you enjoyed our analysis. Thank you so much. Like, share, subscribe if you like what you've watched.